Imagine participating in a course where you were able to access the materials not only by listening to the instructor or reading the textbooks or even watching a movie about it, but also by being able to practice it, try it out, that sort of thing. Wouldn't that be an ideal class? Why is it that as educators we don't strive to make all of our classes that way? I know that this might sound like a lot of work, but really if it's done a little bit over time, it can be easily done, and it'll benefit you and all the students. Now, I know you might think that the students in this particular scenario might be a little bit spoiled because they have these resources, but why wouldn't we do that? Not only does it benefit all of the students, if you have a student in there with a special need, it'll also benefit them. I know it might seem like a lot of work, but if done over a period of time, it's really not that big of a deal. Now imagine yourself as one of those students, and imagine if you were only able to access the materials in one way. Now, what is your worst way of learning? Reading, hearing, seeing? Now, what if that was the only way you could learn it? How effective would that be for you? This is the dilemma that often faces people with disabilities. Imagine trying to read a book if you're blind, watching a movie if you're blind, watching a movie if you're deaf and there's no captions. How much would you get out of any of those scenarios? The point I'm making here is about universal design. The concept was developed at NC State, and the idea is to make things accessible to all people. This is particularly important in the field of education, to make learning accessible by everyone. There are easy ways to incorporate universal design in your classes, as you add new materials or references, and eventually you can have your entire class meet the standards. If you have colleagues that teach similar classes to yours, you can share materials, and this can benefit you and them by making it an easier transition for all of you. Suzanne Mistric is joining me now. She's the accessibility expert at Wake Tech. She's going to help us to learn a little bit more about universal design, accessibility, and how it applies to our online classes. Thank you for joining me, Suzanne.
Thank you, Christine, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, as always, and I really look forward to talking with you about accessibility.
Thank you. Can you tell me more about universal design and how it relates to education?
Well, Christine, universal design in its simplest terms are multiple types of representation of material, multiple options for expression, and then multiple types of engagement. It's a phrase that derived at our own North Carolina State University in the School of Design. One of the professors, Ron Mace, and to quote him exactly, universal design is the design of products and environments to be usable by all people to the greatest extent possible without need of adaptation or specialized design. What better theory would there be to integrate into the education environment, where we can not only meet the needs of our students with disabilities, but each of our students has varied learning needs and learning styles. And with the adaptation of this one element into our planning, we've not only met the guidelines of accessibility requirements, we've also made our education better for everyone. And we have allowed these theories of universal design to improve our thought process in creating materials to make sure that the point that we're trying to get across is understood by as many of our students as possible. And that is the optimum learning experience.
So how do we apply universal design to our classes at the community college level?
That's an excellent question, Christine. And in the online learning environment, it's critical that instructors provide their material in a variety of formats, not only to engage the students, but also to meet the guidelines mandated by federal standards. It also just makes the material more usable to the wider variety of students. Not only do we meet the need of the occasional blind student by providing the synchronous audio, we also might enable a student who learns best by hearing the material again to have this content available so that they perhaps plug it into their iTunes and plug it into their car MP3 player. So Not only does the student who with a disability that occasionally has this need benefit, also every student, because they're given the information in a variety of formats, which is a universal design concept that benefits everybody.
So where can I get help while I'm making this transition?
Another excellent question, Christine. And just as we're expecting instructors to approach their new materials from the concept of universal design and providing in material in multiple formats, as trainers and as accessibility specialists, it's my job too to give instructors multiple means of utilizing tools and material that's out there so that they can apply these theories to their course material. We would speak with an instructor and evaluate, does this instructor need training so that they're able to utilize tools that they already have to make their material multifaceted? Does this instructor need software so that they're able to transcribe the presentation and easily add their captions so that they can have the synchronous versions of their material? Does this instructor have so much content that they've already used that needs to be brought up to date? Do we need to bring in other people to help them make this valuable content something modular that we can share, for example, in the lore? Or at some point we may find that we have so much material we have to bring in outside resources to transcribe for us. There are a variety of answers, and we will establish individual instructor needs and support them from the decision levels right on through to the adding of modular content to the North Carolina Learning Object Repository, which we hope to do with much of this material. And in addition to the face-to-face or email interactions we can have with instructors, I hope to provide a dynamic resource for materials as a part of our accessibility options on the distance education webpage, where we will present our accessibility statement and our commitment to providing accessible materials. I plan to have resources that I update as I find new products. And I am always doing that. New things that we can use to streamline this process. As an instructor comes to me with a challenge and I resource the solutions, I'd like to be able to share these resources in a place that everyone can access, and hopefully it will be available through the distance education website.
Is there a training course where I can learn about accessibility and universal design?
Christine, you've given me a great opportunity to plug the training class that I'm offering. One's in session right now, a 5-week session, this particular interface. I'm providing training, what the standards are, how one might bring their materials that they would like to bring up to standard, and how to create new materials with universal design concepts that meet federal guidelines and Americans with Disabilities Act guidelines in new materials. So yes, we have a course that will be offered online and in seated format so that instructors can learn all they need to know to create these accessible courses and learning object modules.